Tuscany, known for its calm settings, undulating hills, and amazing beauty. Perfect picture-wise, then. But suppose I told you below this beautiful facade sits a sinister secret. A secret so evil it has plagued Italy for more than half a century. An enigmatic, terrible presence, the monster of Florence, transformed these serene slopes into a site of unbounded misery. Tonight, we are exploring this eerie mystery, one that still baffles us today. August 21st, 1968. A lovely summer evening starts our tale. Just outside Florence, in the little, peaceful town of Signa, something happened that none could have predicted. Found horribly dead in their automobile were a young couple just out of their teens. Though blood should have permeated this scene, it was marred with the innocent of adolescent love. And what distinguishes this catastrophe even more from others? Sleeping quietly in the back seat, a 6-year-old lad is totally oblivious to his world, having just been destroyed beyond recovery. The cops moved swiftly. After arresting a suspect, they obtained a conviction based on apparently indisputable proof. Closed case, correct? But as the years passed, a terrible awareness began to grip me. From the darkness was starting to show the shadow of another killer, someone even more deliberate, far more terrible. 6 years went by, and in 1974, another couple was discovered dead under shockingly identical conditions. Their bodies were shockingly disfigured, so much so that it is difficult to even articulate. And this was the starting point. More young couples would meet the same terrible end over the next 10 years. Every murder fit a terrible, almost exact pattern. Young couples looking for seclusion in the bucolic Tuscany countryside, only to be savagely assaulted late at night. Early in the 1980s, it became shockingly obvious. This was not a run-through of hapless murders. One serial murderer was stalking Tuscany. As he came to be called, the monster of Florence lurked in the darkness. This monster was hunting. He was not just murdering, his manner was deliberate, even surgical. Always attacking in remote, lonely regions where no one would hear their calls for aid, he selected his victims with terrible accuracy. His preferred weapon is a Beretta, .22 caliber handgun, which left its imprint at every crime scene, a ghastly calling card that teased the authorities and sent waves of anxiety through the town. The authorities were nowhere closer to apprehending him, despite the mounting number of victims and the mountain of proof gathering underfoot. The monster constantly one step ahead, his shadow sliding between the legal fingers. One of the biggest and most sophisticated in Italian history, the inquiry into the monster of Florence grew. Detectives chased down every lead, sieved through mounds of data, and questioned innumerable individuals non-stop. The public yearns for answers, and the strain is great. But every fresh lead appeared to send them farther into a maze of dead ends and false hopes, as if the monster was playing with them, always just out of grasp. The situation then turned horrifically in 1985. The monster hit once more, this time aimed at 2 German visitors. Their deaths were discovered in their vehicle, giving an international element to the investigation that just raised police pressure and scrutiny. How may this killer keep on eluding capture. Why was this phantom haunting Tuscany? And why was nobody able to stop him? At last, in 1994, the cops appeared to have found a break. Arrested and accused of the killings was Pietro Pacciani, a violent previous local farmer. Though mostly circumstantial, the evidence was really strong. Pacciani was known to visit the places where the killings had occurred and had a violent past. Even witnesses said they had seen him close to numerous of the crime sites. The residents of Tuscany sighed with relief for a split second. The monster seemed to have at last been apprehended. Still, the experiment was far from simple. Pacciani's defense team said that the witnesses were untrustworthy and that the evidence against him was meager. Conversely, the prosecution presented Pacciani as a monster, a guy capable of performing the most horrible deeds known to exist. Pacciani was found guilty following an arduous and divisive trial. Justice seems to have been done. The surprising turn of events thereafter saw Pacciani's conviction reversed on appeal. Question marks began to seep in. Should the police have arrested the incorrect man? Still lurking in the shadows, observing as the authorities mishandled the case, was the actual monster. The hypotheses concerning the monster's identity got increasingly strange and complicated as the search continued on. Some started to think that a satanic cult was responsible for the murders, carrying out ceremonial executions under cover of darkness. Others proposed a plot, including maybe even police personnel, that permeated the top levels of Italian society. It started to dawn on one that the monster was a community of people cooperating in a twisted covenant of slaughter rather than one person. There was also a hypothesis that the murders were a part of a blackmail operation aimed at powerful and rich people. Another view was that the monster was a proficient hunter, keeping one step ahead of the police by means of his thorough awareness of the Tuscan countryside. Still, the most terrifying idea of all, that the monster may still be out there, harboring the darkest of secrets and leading an apparently normal existence under the cover of corruption and secrecy. Tuscany still has the legacy of anxiety and mistrust left by the monster of Florence. After dusk, couples stopped exploring the countryside. Faced with what or who might be hiding in the darkness, families bolted their doors. Once representing calm and beauty, the quiet hills started to cause grief and anxiety. For those who remember, the moniker Monster of Florence still causes goosebumps down their spines. Still hanging long dark over the area is the anxiety that the actual killer or killers were never found. The monster's rule of terror transformed Tuscany's entire fabric, not only claimed lives. People started to grow dubious of strangers and even of their neighbors. The case came to represent the failure of justice, a terrible warning that occasionally the truth stays latent in the shadow. Not only were the killings traumatizing the society, but also the ambiguity and persistent concern about justice never really being delivered. 30 years later, we still have more questions than answers. Is the monster of Florence still out there? His identity buried beneath a wall of corruption and lies? Was Pietro Pacciani only a convenient target for desperate authorities? Or was he indeed the monster? Could there have been more than one killer cooperating in a perverse alliance of murder? And maybe the most unsettling query of all, might the monster have been someone in a position of authority, someone who knew the system well enough to control it, someone who covered his traces and carried on his murdering rampage unrestrained? The Monster of Florence case transcends mere serial murderer behavior. It's about a nation still looking for answers, a society tormented by terror, and an inquiry still among Italy's most unresolved riddles. The disturbing fact is that we might never know what actually happened in those dark areas of Tuscany. The case file is still open, the responses buried far down the historical maze. Who then was the Florence monster? A lone madman, or something far more sinister? Was one guy or many? The reality of what actually transpired in those far-off, dark Tuscany nooks locks the solution hidden in the shadows of history. The narrative of the Monster of Florence is far from finished. If this story gripped you as much as it did us, why not hit that subscribe button? We explore more mysteries just like this one, diving deep into the world's most baffling cases. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on our latest investigations, and together we might even uncover some new clues. So if you're up for more stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, click subscribe and join us for the next chapter. Thanks for watching, and until next time.